I want to preface by saying that I enjoyed the movie a lot, and I learned a lot about the network that existed in place and how sophisticated it was. Sometime, I think early in 2024, the book Perfect Victims by Muhammad Al Kurd was released. Was it discussed amongst the staff? I assume that the movie is still being made. The premise of the book was that in order for victimhood, especially like colonized victimhood, to be taken seriously, it has to be somebody who appears very harmless. On the outside, it has to be a child, particularly if it's um, a young girl, and that an equally valid victim of colonial violence, that's maybe a man in his 20s, or a woman, just someone who's not a child, wouldn't garner sympathy or wouldn't be seen as worthy of um, like sympathy, or even perhaps in the world like a legitimate target for violence that nobody should be a target for. Was this idea brought up, or was this concern brought up amongst the production staff or the actors? And was there like an angle to the movie in kind of combating that idea, or was it not brought up at all? Perhaps.
Um, this is something that we spoke about specifically as actors as well. This idea of, people talk about victimizing, and I think Kauthar, she said something that I think is brilliant. She said, "I wasn't trying to give Hind her voice because she already has a voice. I was just amplifying it." And it was the story that spoke to her. She was actually working on a film. She was in like all getting in production for a film right beforehand, and she was at the airport and she saw the news and she heard her voice, and it stung her in a way where she felt like she was witness and she couldn't just turn away. And she said, "What can I do as a filmmaker, as an artist? I can't just go and make another movie about something unrelated." She really felt like she needed to use her talent, and that's what she did. It was the one thing that called, but not that's not to say that um, others don't have her Hind's voice does not negate anyone else's, but unfortunately we live in a world where um, all the news gets lost. And Kauthar said, there's so many stories she wanted to talk about, but with film and cinema, you really have to zoom in. And Hind, yes, represents children, but she represents more than that too. This film also talks, which is why she brings in Hind's mother at also, and even the Palestine Red Crescent, which I think they get overlooked. They're still dealing with the trauma, and they still have decided to continue and still work every day with the same hope and the same resilience. So um, it's a very interesting. And I've read that book, and I actually had that comment in my head, but unfortunately, this is the reality we live in, and I hope that this film raises these kinds of questions and keeps the conversation going.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. Okay, we'll take a couple from this side. Ramzi, there's a question here.
Thank you so much. It's embarrassing to talk, honestly. Um, there's, we're so beyond questions and understanding. A question, though, I do wonder, and if this is too personal, please just let me know. When you were in the role, how did you balance like your sense of reality and the role itself?
Thank you for that. No, I'm happy to share. I think anytime that it did feel like it was hard to balance, I'd remind myself that I'm just telling the story versus they're still living it to this day. Um, and the support on set was beyond incredible, from the cast to the crew, director, everyone. It really, there was so much love on set. It felt like one big hug all throughout. So being in a safe environment also helped. And we shot the film chronologically. because the location allowed us to do so. So we did as minimal takes as possible. You know, Kauthar hid the voice from us during rehearsals. She asked us if we're okay with that, and we all agreed that it was the smartest thing to do. So the first time we heard her voice was on action, and it was scene per scene. So really, that reaction you saw was as real as it can get. Um, and then it's also this constant reminder of we as actors know what happened to Hind versus the Palestine Red Crescent at the time didn't, and they held on to hope to the very end, and so did Hind. So it was this battle of continuing that. But Kauthar gave us also the freedom to express ourselves certain times with improv, and I was shocked to see some of the scenes that made it. Um, you know, there's the scene where Nasreen and Rana fight. That was improv. That was just complete frustration from what has been going on, and Kauthar had captured it, and made it to the cut. And these outlets also were very helpful for us to express ourselves beyond the script.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this behind the scenes information with us and with the audience. It gives us such a better understanding as we're processing the making of the film and the role that you played and the other actors as well. There was a question here. Ramsey will take this one and then we'll pivot here. I do need a time check. Somebody can tell me because there is another screening tonight at 8:30. And there's still seats left if anybody wants to see them. Okay, we're okay.
Could you talk a little bit about the thought process or the distribution of the film and how it's going to be spread around the country, or and how the streaming platforms might be reluctant or their thought process on picking up the film?
So I'm not very involved with that part, but I do know that Willa is the U.S. distribution company, and they are distributing it all over the states. I believe it's a screening here for the month.
The next,
Right.
3 weeks, it will be here at the Gene Siskel Film Center. So tonight is the opening of the theatrical release, which allows the theater now to screen the film multiple times. There's at least a dozen screenings available here in Chicago. And I know you just came from Boston and DC.
Yeah, it was just screening now in Boston. I was just in DC yesterday, and then it's going to be also in San Francisco and LA and New York, and I think all across now through Willa the distribution.
There's a hand in the back and then one in the front. So who wants to make the run? Hamzi? Lena? You stay up here, Lena. There's a question in the front. Thank you.
Get your steps in.
Hi, thank you for being here, Nina. Thank you for doing this. Question about Saja. Sarah and I came up with this question, which is, for the first time ever, and we've attended the film festival. I personally attended for the past 23, 24 years, and Sarah and I have attended at least 10 years consecutively. This is the first time mainstream Hollywood folks are attached to, as far as I know, attached to a Hollywood film. You see Brad Pitt's name, Joaquin Phoenix, and a lot of others. How has that affected the, for obvious ways it gets notoriety, which, you know, somebody asked a question earlier, so for better or worse, at least the story is out there and it's more received. But how did that affect the vibe of the film, the production value, how it's received, and your perspective as an actor?
So I just want to make it clear that they're the executive producers, and they joined after the film had already been completed. So they had no input creatively. They weren't part of production. They weren't part of script writing or any of that. Thank God. But we are very grateful for this. Yeah, I think this was just purely out of, you know, they saw the film and they really believed in the power of cinema, and they just wanted to help in any way, shape, or form, and they wanted to add their names onto the film, which we're very grateful for. You know, the more eyes and names and now, the better, but I'm happy that during the creative process, it was purely a collaboration between Kauthar, the Palestine Red Crescent, and Hind's mom.
So if it isn't being too nosy, their role as executive producers generally are the money behind the film, right? So they help support it in terms of marketing and distribution and releasing.
Yes, so some of the executive producers helped fund it before, during production, but because they joined after, I think their take was what happens now. That is also something that I personally don't feel comfortable talking about because I don't know what happens with all those post stuff. But what I do know is that they joined very late in the process, and so maybe now it's helping out with distribution and whatnot.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Khaled.